Alrighty, hey everybody. Sorry for the delay there. We're having some issues with the streaming end here, but here we are. We're ready to battle here. We've got a former world champion. It's sort of strange to say that, Ray Rizzo here up against the 2012 Japanese national champion, Satoru Masakata slash huuuryu. With me today, we've got a Canadian runner-up of that year, Mike Papagiannis slash Skarm here to do some play-by-play or read Harry Potter fanfics or whatever it is he does on stream. So, hi, Skarm.
Hi, thanks, Scott. I'm really excited here actually to be here to see this match because, well, I've heard Ray is using some sneaky stuff today, but we'll have to see what goes on here. And against huuuryu, who these guys have played a couple times, and I've played a couple times, it's definitely going to be a good match here. So I look forward to it.
It looks like on huuuryu's end, I believe this is his LCQ team. He's got the Palatoad and the Kingdra, Bisharp, Lander, Asterion Form, Conkeldurr, and Cresselia. He was on TV, I think, once, maybe twice during the LCQ, and this looks like the same sort of thing. Remember, he dunked poor Fish pretty hard, so hopefully Ray will learn from Fish's missteps there.
Yeah, that was a tough matchup I think to get from everyone. I played this team a couple times. The Japanese player R Justice is kind of like the big, I guess the big team maker for this kind of play style. And he told me last time yelling over Skype that it was named Justice Rain. So having played it a couple times, it is a fairly solid team, even though it doesn't look as common as some of the other Rain teams you would see. Definitely fits the bill though of being hard to beat if you're not aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that R has shown that he likes from a team building perspective, he's got the two-man rain mode. He's got, Cresselia is always there. Intimidate is something that I guess he's used on and off, but usually he's like that. And then there's always the slow Pokemon, always priority users. I know he used Scissor for a long period of time, and now there's Bisharp there instead, which I think gives an interesting dimension to Rain in general, just because it makes it harder to try to burst down targets because there's the threat of Bisharp ruining your day. So I think that's a lot of fun. I know also on this team, at least at Worlds, he was using the careful choice band version of Landorus Therian form, which was an adaptation that I liked a lot at Worlds. I know some people had been. It's one of those things that was kind of an open secret that a lot of people seemed to be running it, but it hadn't been busted out in a major event prior to that point. But I do like careful Landorus in general, just because you get a decent mix of power and defensive ability there. Since one of the issues with Landers is always kind of like you had to waste the item before to not just get smashed by Ice Beam and like Hidden Power Ice 45 or whatever. So with Careful, you could kind of take that hit and also have an offensive item so you'd actually do damage. Since, especially on a team like this, Landers needs something to boost its damage since it can't just spam Earthquake.
On the other hand, I mean, just to throw it out there, that Careful Landorus also survives Dracometers with Life Orb item, from like Hydreigon and folks. So when you think you can burst it down like you would a Choice Scarf variety, or obviously not a Sash variety without breaking the Sash, you will be in for a very unpleasant surprise. And additionally, the fact that it can explode is also something you really need to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I love Explosion in general, and I've been pleased that recently people have started bringing it back a little bit more with both normal gem and choice band. So that's been a nice part of Landorus in general. And I guess Metagross has been doing it too, though it was Junpei who used it last year.
Who we will also be seeing in this tournament later today, actually, or I'm not sure if he's already played or not, but he is in the tournament. He was kind of the big person there that's trying to get everything organized for this variety, and also Japan's #1 NASCAR fan. So basically, what we're looking at here in a team like this, as Scott was saying, the previous version had the priority steal user and Scissor. Bisharp is always something I've kind of toyed with off and on, just because it really locks down your team. Like it's really. Its ability to lock you down with like the threat of Sucker Punch or the threat of Night Slash when you're thinking, okay, can I Trick Room safely? Can I not? It really plays mind games on its own. And then when you have heavy hitters like Kingdra and Rain, or the Politoed with Water Gem, or Iron Fist and Conkeldurr, you're really setting yourself up for some bad things if you misplay against it.
Yeah, I think this team is especially interesting because it locks down options that are common with the more Japanese-style teams, which obviously, Ray may be the most Japanese-playing American player He's kind of like, there's a group of us, like I should put Skarm and I in as well, where we all kind of play a very Japanese influenced playstyle. And part of that is, you typically have your bulky trick room user like Cresselia, who really, really, really doesn't like playing against Bisharp. So that sets up pretty well against it. I think you're also more likely to see Life Orb dragons rather than the Draco or Dragon Gem Draco Meteor combo dragons that are more commonly seen, I guess, through most players in America and Europe. So again, that's something that makes the Landorus on this team better, since it's it's EV'd to play against that type of player, I guess. So there's a lot of little, I guess, niche choices on this team that I think are pretty good against the sort of play style that, if Ray is playing a serious team here, which he usually isn't for these events, would be particularly effective. And I guess it just, it's a good regional adjustment. We kind of lose that sometimes, since most of us just play against players of our own region, so you kind of just see everything in a vacuum. But some of the little choices like that are probably particularly effective against the opponents that R and huuuryu normally play against.
And let's not forget that we didn't even touch on, because we just kind of assume that everyone is aware, Defiance. Also a huge thing, because I think you'd be very hard pressed to find many teams out there, no matter what region you're in, that aren't carrying like one, if not more, Intimidate users. And that puts a big like wrench into any plans that you might have if you're worried about sending out your Scrafty or something that helps you set up or get an advantage over someone else trying to set up. When you're worried about Bisharp, and also Tornadus as well was a huge thing with that kind of playstyle in Defiant, and we saw that more at Worlds with Arash's team and some of the other teams that were doing well there too. So there's also that aspect, whereas something like Scissor would not have almost, I would say, utility, even though it's not really a utility strat, but they're also lacking something there. So I think that's such a big point that automatically, even before the game starts and before you send out those first two Pokemon, you're already in a mind game whether or not they're going to lead that Bisharp.
Yeah, I think that's really the strength of this team, and what makes it so frustrating just to try to match up against it, because it's got like 3 or 4 different things it can do where you really, really don't want to lead the wrong thing into it in turn 1. He's got the rain mode. If you lead very rain-weak leads, you're probably going to lose the game. A lot of teams use bulky Pokemon and Trick Room to get around that, but you don't necessarily want to lead that because of Bisharp. And then, if you're leading something that's more neutral against those things, you want to be careful not to open yourself up into letting him get Trick Room up for free and start running you down with Kinkeldor, even though it's not the best Trick Room mode in the world with just Kinkeldor there, since Bisharp isn't the slowest and most effective Trick Room sweeper. But it is the rain side we see here, which is probably exactly what Ray wanted.
Yeah, that's another thing to really note is that this team coming out from huuuryu really, it seems like more of a best of 3 style. And for those of you who aren't familiar, in Japan, all of their events, save the ones they play at Worlds, are all best of 1. I think some of these events might be best of 3, but generally speaking, the ones that are best of 1, that's a lot harder. And like, this is even hard. Like, this team seems geared to, okay, what do you normally lead? What would you like to lead against me? I'm going to counter it next game style thing. But with Dry Skin, Jinx on the field, and the Breloom, I think Ray would be most happy to see the Politoed Kingdra lead out for huuuryu.
It's actually a really good anti-rain matchup. It does a surprisingly good job against quite a lot of leads, but Jinx with the quick fake out, and Breloom, if it's his usual team, will have Choice Scarf and Spore and those shenanigans. So we'll see if Jinx can go to town here.
And also noting that Jinx, one of my favorite Pokemon ever since back in Red, Blue, and Yellow. Ryuzaki there, we'll be seeing some of her later today, as she actually plays in her matches and not on the field for Ray. But what you're probably looking out here is, I'd probably hazard a guess you fake out the Kingdra, and then it's really the choice of the Spore. Like, does huuuryu, protect to try and block the fake out Spore combo on the Kingdra, or there's a lot of different options here. So even with the appreciative lead that I'm sure Ray is kind of smiling now in the lead he has, there's still a couple different options here, and he could very quickly lose the advantage if he's not careful.
Yeah, what we get here is not at all what I expected there. The double protect and huuuryu side, which I guess is the safest play to remove the fake out threat. But Ray, proving why he's a world champion, does not fake out at all and just switches Cresselia in and gives it Dry Skin from Jinx. So it'll be a very, very bulky and difficult to deal with Cresselia for the remainder of this game. And you can pretty much guarantee that Cresselia won't be going down to the 2 Pokemon on the field here. Even a boosted Draco Meteor would not be able to take it out, and after that point, there's going to be a very limited offensive threat from huuuryu's side of the field. So a surprising move there, since I was expecting something related to Spore too. But I think this is kind of proving why maybe just using Spore doesn't work for some players, because you have to be able to adapt and deviate, and Ray did a nice job of that there.
But this is like typical Ray, and this is the three-time world champion. And you said, like, I guess ex-world champion, former world champion now. But these are the kind of plays that like obviously we were both talking about a spore and a fake out here, and so what does Ray do? He surprises us all by like skill swapping a dry skin onto a Cresselia against a rain team. Like these are the kind of things that he thinks of, whereas it would not be my first reaction, and that's also why he's the three-time world champion, or a former three-time world champion, and I'm not.
Yeah, what will be interesting here is to see what huuuryu brought for his other two Pokemon. Because like I mentioned before, these two guys not going to knock Cresselia out. So what does he have in the back? If it's Landorus, it's going to have a really hard time getting anything done with two Pokemon on the field on Ray's side that likely have ice moves. And then Bisharp could, I guess he could switch in fairly safely here, but it'd be really important to take out both of these Pokemon. So if it is there, you don't want to take a lot of residual damage in the switch in, so you've got to be very careful about how you bring it in. If it's Conkeldurr, it's the same issue as Landorus, except instead of ice moves, it's two Pokemon using psychic moves. So Ray matches up surprisingly well from a typing perspective, as long as he doesn't give Bisharp free terms.
Which is also really hilarious, given he's using a Jinx. Just noting on that as kind of the odd Pokemon choice, but an additional worry might be Lovely Kiss. Both Protects are down. Yes, Jinx doesn't have dry skin anymore, so you'll probably see it switch out for something else. But on the other hand, there still is that threat, especially if Kingdra decides to run away and flee in face of a dry skin Cresselia that's on the field. So I actually, like, huuuryu doesn't want to lose his leads, but as Scott was mentioning, he also doesn't want to give everything free damage in the back here just by ice beams or potential status moves or psychic. So he might be against a wall right here, so it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a little behind here, but yeah, he does stay in with both Pokemon, and Jinx tries to fire the Lovely Kiss off on Politoed after getting hit by Kingdra's Muddy Water there, but misses the Lovely Kiss and is taken out by Hidden Power from Politoed there. I was a little surprised also there. I thought that it would be more likely that Ray would choose to switch Jinx out there and be able to get that dry skin back, but still, he gets a free Calm Mind in his Cresselia there, so a pretty effective turn. But I guess he doesn't improve his situation that much just because he's down 3-4 now, and he's got the Calm Mind and Cresselia, but he still has the same situation he had before, where he's easily going to beat the two Pokemon on the field with Cresselia, but he still has to worry about the threat of Landorus and Bisharp. And I don't know if Calm Mind really helps him deal with either of those things.
Well, you are correct that I'm definitely a little behind here, so I apologize if I'm not making any sense based on what's happening. But and interestingly enough, Ray really, I think Ray has to be a lot more scared of Bisharp at this point, because if it's a Calm Mind set, that generally limits your attacking moves. So I'm not really sure what Ray's running, but the chances of him running something like even Hidden Power Fire, not that effective in the rain, and that Bisharp will probably one-shot him or close to it back. So he's got to be very, very careful if Bisharp's in the back if this is the decision he's going to make. It'd be interesting to see if he brings out Breloom to try and set up some more sleep status so that Cresselia has an easier time on the field.
Yeah, and it is Breloom we see out here is Ray's replacement. So, I mean, that helps. Obviously, it makes it much more dangerous for Kingdra to try to stay out there and risk getting spored, which will not miss like Lovely Kiss. And also, it makes it even harder to bring Breloom in. But at the same token, he's also exposing Breloom, and getting it knocked out right now would almost lead to certain defeat if Ray does, or if huuuryu does have Bisharp in the back. So he's going to be really careful with this. There's an opportunity to make big plays here, but if he screws up, it's probably going to be game.
And that's definitely a problem here. It's another one of those risky things. That's why I'm kind of surprised that Ray didn't switch out the Jinx when he had the chance to reset the dry skin, which would have effectively, other than the King to Draco meter, really given him a good check to what he has.
Yeah, we see a miss from Kingdra there, and Bullet Seed from Breloom, so a little bit surprised by that. Obviously, it was definitely the right play to attack rather than... I guess I can't say it's definitely the right play. I think it was the right play to attack rather than Spore there. He gets some important damage down on Kingdra, but I guess surprising to see him not lock into Spore. The expected play there. Another free Cresselia too, which is big. We see one of the two remaining Pokemon on huuuryu's side in Conkeldurr, who probably isn't super excited about facing off with a now too calm-minded Cresselia, but he may choose to sacrifice it just to get a free switch in for Breloom here if he's got it available.
And that's definitely the thing. No one really... The way huuuryu is definitely playing this leads me to believe he has Bisharp in the back. Otherwise, he would probably not be too worried. Or rather, I'd be a little more worried. He's most likely setting himself up Priority moves with Kinkelder, maybe hurting the Breloom a little bit so that he can bring in Bisharp and sweep out the other two off the field. I'm not really sure what he would do with Landorus if he did bring that on the field or bring that out in the field and bring that in the back as well. So I'm really anticipating that we'd see Bisharp in the back.
Yeah, and Bisharp is what we see switching in here. Ray chooses a switch as well and brings out his second fighting Pokemon. So Ray is no fool. Obviously notices that he's got that problem with Bisharp we mentioned before. It brings both of his fighting Pokemon, but Bisharp does get that ever dangerous free switch in, and while Ray is able to take advantage of it to knock Kingdra out with Cresselia, he's still in a very dangerous position here. He's got to find a way to control Bisharp using two fighting Pokemon before it can take out Cresselia. If he does that, and Cresselia is at reasonable health at all, it should be able to finish this game fairly easily against a Kinkelder and a Palatoad, but Bisharp is pretty much the worst thing you can be facing down with a boosted Cresselia, because it's one of the few things that can knock it out quickly and prevent it from doing major damage, especially since even if it has Hidden Power Fire, which is pretty common on offensive Cresselia, the rain is up, so it won't be able to do full damage.
It's not going to do full damage, and it's not going to... And even if it was, Calm Minds aside, he still has to be very careful about that Sucker Punch then. So, and he's still not sure what item the Bisharp is running. If it's Dark Gem and the Sucker Punch is there, especially on an offensive Cresselia, that's going to hurt, no matter what happens. You also definitely have to be careful about the priority fighting moves, though, so it should be very interesting to see how Huuuryu plays this.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Ray, I would have done the research to figure out what item Huuuryu used in Worlds LCQ. I actually don't know the answer. I believe it is Dark Gem, but
it's Dark Gem, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I mean that certainly makes things easier if he does know.
Well, that's the thing. I imagine because Ray was speaking with Ray before the battle. He said he had matched up against this particular team a couple times before, just playing Huuuryu and playing R, kind of in some test battles. I think after Worlds actually they were just playing some friendlies. So Ray is familiar with the team. It's just whether or not Huuuryu has actually made some updates, maybe to give himself a better matchup. Ray was a little worried that, likewise, the reverse would hold true, and the team that Ray would be using would be something that Huuuryu would be familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was familiarity or just making a better play there, but you see Ray get rocked pretty hard on that term. He attacks twice into Bisharp's Protect and uses Kinkelder for free to Palatoad's Hydro Pump and falls down 2-3 here, which is bad on several levels. First of all, I guess just the deficit is bad enough on its own, but he also has Breloom out here who's going to have to lock into a move for the rest of the game. It's probably going to have to be the fighting move because otherwise Bisharp's going to win for free. So it really limits his options. He can't lock into Bullet Seed to help deal with Palatoad, and he can't use Spore unless he thinks that he can knock out Breloom with just Cresselia, or Bisharp with just Cresselia, which actually is a pretty interesting option, I think.
It's also a good option. Now, Spore might not be a terrible option here, but then he also does have to be careful that Sucker Punch is going to, be faster than that, especially if Cresselia starts attacking. He doesn't really have to worry about the Palatoad at all when he has Cresselia on the field, so...
I was going to say, I think that's the solution there, because he doesn't have to attack with Cresselia this turn. If Huuuryu chooses not to protect, he can just Spore and Calm Mind. And I guess if he chooses does to protect, he can Spore and Calm Mind the other target. So both sides have that play there. But I think Spore is actually probably Ray's best lock here, assuming that Huuuryu is not just going to give him Bisharp for free.
And we have to imagine he's not, because Bisharp's pretty much Huuryu's win condition here. It's the only way he's going to deal with the Cresselia, barring some obscene luck on the other side of the field. The Spore is definitely the best way. Calm Mind and Spore again, and then look to sweep otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best move too, because at the worst case scenario there, assuming Huuuryu doesn't go for the double protect, which I think would be extremely foolish at this point in the game when he's got control. Worst case scenario, you get Kinkelder sleeping for free, and Cresselia gets yet another Calm Mind up, so I think that puts you in a pretty good spot.
And that's what Ray really has to worry about here. If Kinkelder's sleeping and Palatoad decides to use Ice Beam or something and do some significant damage to that Breloom, then Ray has lost really his only check, well, literally his only other remaining check to the Bisharp, other than flowing away with, presumably Hidden Power Fires against the Bisharp there.
Yeah, we do see Bisharp switching out to Kinkelder there. I thought that was a fairly obvious play on Huuuryu's end, so I'm sure Ray anticipated it also. But we do see him making a move that neither of us expected here and locking into Bullet Seed. He is able to take out the Palatoad there, but at what cost?
At what cost, Ray Rizzo? At what cost?
I guess we technically, I don't believe, know for certain that it is still scarfed. I'd be very surprised if he changed it, but it's possible that he did change the item because I don't think we've seen anything out at the same time that had to be faster than it without the item anyway.
Yeah, and that makes it a little more difficult. Not really sure what the thought process was there, unless it might be hidden power fighting on the Bisharp and not hidden power fire. I'd be really surprised at that, honestly, but...
Yeah, I mean, we get a really awkward turn here. I'm not completely certain what I would do here if I was Ray, but assuming he is still locked into Bullet Seed there, I'm not certain how you stop Bisharp exactly. You got to attack at least twice more. I assume Hidden Power Fire knocks it out, so if it is Dark Gemmed, and he does get an attack off, it will knock it out. But how do you make that happen? Because I assume that Dark Gem Sucker Punch will easily knock out in the other direction, so...
It's definitely a thing that they're going to have problems with trying to counter here, especially because he also, like... You gotta also be careful with the Conkeldurr doing some significant damage to the Breloom here too, and there is the ability to protect with Bisharp if you're that worried about anticipating another Calm Mind to avoid the Sucker Punch. So I don't like Ray's chances from this position.
Yeah, I mean he's got to make a really good prediction at some point in the next turn or two, where either he has to catch Bisharp somehow and get a knockout here, which I'm not completely certain he's actually has the potential to threaten, unless he did change Breloom's item. But if he can't catch it protecting, get a free knockout at Conkeldurr, he has decent odds that way, I think no matter what.
Well, I would like to say that if anyone can do it, it's probably Ray. So, seeing as he's kind of surprised me every single way here, and the fact that he keeps going back to choose Breloom's move almost makes me wonder if the item did change. That being said, I don't think it's is very likely here.
Yeah, I don't either. And we see a Sucker Punch coming out from Bisharp, but hitting Breloom, which was definitely not the move I expected, but I think this is a better move than I wanted to think it was. Both Pokemon on huuuryu side picking their priority moves and going after Breloom to get the quick knockout there. At the very least, if it did drop a Choice Scarf, it's still... Where it chose not to use Mach Punch, which doesn't seem very likely. So I'm going to assume that's still Scarfed. And even with 3 Calm Minds, Cresselia's Hidden Power Fire only does about 75% to Bisharp there, which should clean up the first game for huuuryu.
Exactly. That was not the play anticipated, but in hindsight, this is probably why these players are much more skilled than I am, just because the way that was played removed the only threat that Ray really had, and knowing that it was Hidden Power Fire and would not KO is also good, just knowing the damage calculations that you have.
Yeah, I mean, there is still a win condition here for Ray. There's actually I like his position better than I did the previous turn, because if he predicts Huuryu's Protect correctly and knocks out that Pokemon, I think he wins. I guess pending his item, which we still haven't seen. Because, I mean, huuuryu Blue is Dark Gem, right? So he's not going to just get the knockout with Sucker Punch anymore. So if Ray correctly anticipates the turn Bisharp chooses to protect, and either Hidden Power Fires if it doesn't protect, or Psychics Conkeldurr if it does, I think he actually wins the game now. Which is part of why I thought that was a bizarre turn for huuuryu there, since it was sort of high risk, low reward. He may not have sniffed the Scarf out, but I mean, like if he just chose to Sucker Punch Ice Punch that turn, I feel like he's in much better shape than with what he did here, where now he needs, I don't know, he may not actually have a win condition other than outsmarting Ray pretty severely here.
Well, it's one of those things where it comes down to what is your opponent going to do, and it could easily go either way here. And it's just how well do you know how your opponent is playing right now. I typically like myself playing against the Japanese opponents. I find them easier to play against. Either we think more the same way, or I just get the reads easier. But it's just one of those situations where you're sitting down across from your opponent virtually in this place, and they're going, "We both have win conditions. So what are you going to do based on what I've seen you do the rest of the battle?"
I've actually liked huuuryu's predicting a little bit better so far. Like, Ray had an awesome turn 1 when he was executing his tricks there, which, it's one of those turns where just like, I don't think it's reasonable to anticipate Ray's play as huuuryu, but huuuryu did have a good play earlier in the game where he got the 2 attacks into his Protect, so as we'll see, Bisharp does choose to attack here, so Ray would have to have Hidden Power Fire to keep the win, and here it is.
And yeah, I'll apologize. I'm still really far behind here. So Scott wants to tell us what happened. That would be great.
Yeah, it seems like we're all synced a little differently here, but sorry, this is the problems always of trying to deal with broadcasting Pokemon. But we do see the hidden power fire going down on Bisharp and taking the knockout there. And Cresselia heals with both leftovers and dry skin after the ice punch from Kinkelders. So Ray will easily take the first game here unless he finds a miraculous way to lose 1 versus 1 with a 60% Cresselia against a Kinkelder in spite of having 3 Calm Minds, which would be truly a world champion's feat to find a way to lose this. But
maybe not a world champion's feat. This sounds like something I could do very easily. But yeah, like it's just one of those things that I guess I'm actually surprised that the Sucker Punch didn't do as much as it did, to be honest. We know that Bisharp blew the Dark Gem a long time ago. Well, I guess not a long time ago, but to secure the kill on Breloom. So I guess that really means that Ray is probably running a really defensive Cresselia, not like some of the offensive ones, because he has Calm Mind to raise his special attack.
Yeah, I kind of assumed. I mean, the damage calc isn't that much more than I was expecting. I guess because I saw his HP, right? It's basically max. So I was assuming it was a defensive-oriented EV spread. But yeah, I mean, it definitely did a little bit less than normal. So I would expect that he's using a physically bulky spread to play off of Calm Mind and also some of the defensive abilities in his team. He's got 2 sleep users and, I guess unique shenanigans like the skill shot dry skin he had this game. So it does enable him to play a game that's a little bit longer there. So an impressive comeback win for Ray there. I was a little worried for him, but I guess I should know better by now. I guess as someone who's played in these American teams, Ray's always the one we can count on. He always does well in these matches. He actually, I think the last show match we played against Korea, he was winning with this team and his connection went out. So no one can stop this team but the internet.
Just like the internet is making this difficult to broadcast. But on the other hand, that's one of those things. Ray is the one you can count on. Like, we went to Worlds, like the 3 of us, Scott, myself, and Ray, we all went to Worlds in 2012, and so by the time lunch rolled around, Ray had all but one of our wins, and the one win that we had collectively that wasn't Ray was Scott beating me. So that just about goes to show you how well we can count on Ray to be the hero in this case.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's just, we're all just part of Ray's fan club, just waiting eagerly for Ray to carry us. Didn't work out this year, but
Ray, please.
Yeah, I guess it's worth noting too. This is one of the stranger transitions into a game 2 I can imagine. I believe they both mostly knew each other's teams before. Both teams are pretty famous. Ray used his team at Nationals, and I know the battle video of him battling, and I think in Fuego has like some amount of views. I think it's like several thousand. So I would imagine huuuryu has probably seen it. And if he didn't see it there, I'm sure he played it in the friendly matches after Worlds. And then on the same token, I know for a fact that Ray was watching huuuryu play on the screen. So normally after a game 1 in a best of 3 like this, you're like, okay, what did I learn in game 1? But in this case, you didn't really learn anything. It's more like playing, I guess they're just playing 3 game 3s here, right? You know basically everything about your team and your opponent's team, and you just have to kind of anticipate what they're likely to bring and counter it. I thought that Ray's 4 were an interesting choice in this match, and probably the right one, just because he had 2 Pokemon that beat the other 5 members of huuuryu's team really well, and then 2 Pokemon that beat Bisharp, who I guess is huuuryu's most important piece here, as we focused on a lot in game 1.
And that's really the case. Here I would be surprised if huuuryu brought Rain. I don't really think that worked in his favor, especially with the skill swap and Dry Skin and Calm Mind Cresselia. It just seems like Ray's team is really suited to beating that, which isn't really surprising, since he was running this for a Nationals environment originally, where there was the possibility to face a lot of hard Rain teams. I would probably hazard a guess that we're going to see some Landorus in this match, maybe just to try and shut some things down quickly. Or to get some damage in there, because he really cannot let Cresselia set up again like he did last time, especially if Bisharp blocking the Dark Gem is going to be able to be a serious threat.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would be surprised if we don't see that. Though I think it'll be really difficult to play, to the point that if he doesn't bring it, I'll understand. But anything about Landorus here, it doesn't really want to deal with Breloom, even though it's got the Intimidate to slow it down, because Spore is obviously a huge problem for it, and even Bullet Seed, if it isn't intimidated, probably gets the knockout there, since it's especially bulky rather than physically bulky. Jinx, as not something you typically think about when you're team building, but Jinx is actually one of the few Pokemon that are much better against this version of Landorus than one of the more traditional versions, because unlike with like Focus Sash or Yacht, Ice Beam will still easily knock it out, right? Like, Careful's not going to protect it from something as strong as Jinx. It is one of the higher special attacks of the available Pokemon. That might be a little generous, but it's like 115 or something, so it's strong.
It is really strong, and the stab ice beam is not too many. It's not something we actually see too much in VGC, which I think a lot of people kind of forget. Like, a lot of things learn ice attacks, but not many of them have stab ice attacks or same type attack bonus ice attacks. So I think that's really something that most people are going to overestimate here, or underestimate rather. I should say in that regard. And Jinx can mess up a lot of things on Huuuryu's team here. Just other than if assuming its name isn't Bishop, but it'll be interesting to see that come out again. I'd be surprised if Ray didn't lead off with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the weird team building problems with this matchup. Because typically when you're playing against ice attacks, like, okay, well, the only ice type Pokemon I really need to worry about is Abomasnow, and he actually deals with that pretty well. He's got the rain to turn off hail warning. He's got Conkeldurr and Bisharp, which are both very difficult to deal with for Abomasnow. Even Cresselia walls it pretty hard. So, he's protected Landorus pretty well in that regard. And then, the only other common ice-type attacks are, like, Hidden Power Ice from electric types, which, again, he checks pretty well. Or, like, other Cresselia, which, again, he checks pretty well. He's got... I don't think he has an awesome matchup with Cresselia, I guess, which is part of why he just lost to him. But he does at least have Bisharp there. But Jinx is a whole different game, right? And, like, even... ignoring some of the things that we've talked about before, it also has Lovely Kiss, so you can't just sucker punch it like you would one of those other ice-type attackers. With Bisharp there, because if you guess wrong, you're just going to get put to sleep, and then Jinx is going to knock out all of his friends. So it's surprisingly difficult to play around, I guess. I think Jinx is one of those Pokemon that's a little too high risk, high reward to ever be like a high-end option in VGC, but this is actually a matchup where it's really good. Dry Skin counters 2 Pokemon, it has super effective attacks on 2 more, and Lovely Kiss is a fairly large problem for the other 2, so it's really a strange situation, actually.
It's really one of those situations where it's like, in this specific instance, you should be using Jinx to hard counter Huuuryu, and that's really something I would probably never say in any other matchup, because, like you mentioned, Jinx doesn't like things like Focus Sash, it doesn't like things like Choice Scarf, and, it doesn't like being outsped in general, but then on the other hand, you see the thing that's outspeeding it is Kingdra, and, Kingdra goes right into Dry Skin, and if you're using Draco Meteor, on the Jinx, then you might just be allowing yourself to be set up on by something else. So, in terms of this context, Jinx is a very, very solid pick.
Yeah, I don't know how we managed to find this situation, but we did it. We found the one situation where Jinx is, like, amazing.
And I'm totally okay with that. Jinx, number 1 in my heart after Female Jellicent.
I'd just like to thank the Academy for this moment, but yeah.
For this single moment, where it's almost like when I remember team building once with Ray and Feathers, and we actually stumbled on a situation where Emboar would be the best choice for a certain metagame, and it was really ridiculous. But those things do happen, and that's also what makes things... those teams really, really good to watch. That's why watching, Wolf Glick or some of those players are really good too, because... who would have expected Executor to be, the runner-up for the Worlds in 2012?
Yeah, I think that's some of the fun of the game, too. I think people try a little too hard to be creative sometimes, but when you can find applications of more niche Pokemon that work and accent their strengths like that, it can be very difficult to deal with for an unprepared metagame. I guess one thing about this that's entertaining to me is that it's not like Ray's catching people by surprise at this anymore. Like, the first couple times he used it, it was like, okay, that's pretty silly, and, like, you wouldn't expect to have to deal with this, but I think this is the team you anticipate from Ray in a show match in 2013, and it's still working. He is well on his way to being completely undefeated with it, actually.
Yeah, it's just one of those teams that's, okay, well... Anyway, I'm sure you've led stuff already, and I'm probably still really far behind here, but like we expected the Jinx to come out right away.
Yeah, we got Jinx and Breloom against the Rain lead. I was kind of mixed. I know you mentioned in the pregame that you expected to see the 4 non-Rain Pokemon this time, and at some level I agree with that maybe this wasn't the best choice you could have made. I think there's big problems with his alternatives too, so... He's just got to pick which bad matchup he thinks he can deal with, and at least with this option, he's got some amount of offensive pressure with Draco Meteor. But, this is a bad spot, and it's the same bad spot he was in the first game. So I'm curious what he thinks he can do to avoid being in the making the same mistakes he made the first time. He really doesn't want to let Dryskin get on Cresselia for free again. So I would expect Ray to not give him the opportunity. But if I was huuuryu, I would probably blast away at Braylon's slot there just to make sure that doesn't happen. At least get some damage before the Calm Mind start going up if Ray chooses the same strategy. But I guess I don't hate that huuuryu chose to do the same thing, though, just because a couple of better predictions with the Bisharp toward the end there, and he would have won the game. So it's not like we get blown out or something.
You have to really appreciate the tough situation that huuuryu is actually in right now, because, like Scott just mentioned, he has to be careful about letting Cresselia set up. So you can fire away at Breloom, but also if you choose to do that, you're leaving yourself open to such fun things as faking out the Kingdra and sporing your other slot, and then getting set up on with Cresselia. So there's a lot of things that huuuryu has to take into consideration here to make sure, and that's also why we said Jinx is probably one of the best Pokemon for this matchup, somehow.
Yeah, it wasn't faking out Kingdra and sporing the other slot this time, so much as faking out Kingdra and sporing Kingdra's slot. And that's the danger of this lead, I guess, is that Ray can do a variety of different tricks there. And rather than doing what he did in the first game, he did what would have been the most expected move the first time and double targeted the Kingdra there. I think that's sort of what's frustrating about playing as a team like this, is that he does have those ridiculous options like the one he picked the first game you have to worry about. But if you worry too much about those, you start avoiding the obvious predictions, I guess. And he just does his simplest move there and ends up with an advantage here.
Yeah, so this I imagine we're going to sit here probably for a little while while they decide what they want to do, because Ray really, you could almost say he won the game based on his decision in the first game. So it's now that he's shown that card, and now huuuryu has a little more information about the skill swap aspect and the Calm Mind Cresselia, you really have to wonder if he's... we could probably run around this in circles going, okay, well, if he does this, if he does this, if he does this... It's really coming down to one of those situations like at the end of last game where you're sitting there wondering what they're going to do, even though there's only a couple options on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ray has some cool options there, too, because he can either choose to attack with Jinx or to start applying Spore, and I guess either way he gets an advantage there. So he can either go the dry skin route, or he can go the, I guess, Breloom tries to sleep everything route. But we do see Cresselia coming in for Breloom there, so I guess he's picking a Cresselia-centric win condition once again. And this time, Lovely Kiss lands on Palatoad, so good position for Ray here with two sleeping Pokemon, and Cresselia getting in for free, which will likely be the target of a skill-swapped dry skin very shortly.
Yeah, that's that was just one of those situations that we were wondering, and where he decided not in this case to go for the instant I'm just going to bring it in right away and take the hit. He decided very much that he was going to play it a little safe now, give him the two sleeping Pokemon, let him get Cresselia worked up a bit, while huuuryu has to decide, does he let it Calm Mind, or does he start bringing out Bisharp and Kekelder to face Jinx's attacks right away. There's a lot of different things we could see here coming from Ray, and I think the longer that huuuryu is indecisive here and doesn't make the right decision, the faster we're going to see Ray win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that huuuryu is successfully wound up in... this is pretty close to the worst-case scenario, I guess, especially with Kingdra not getting the minimum sleep there and getting a couple extra turns in. A little bit surprised that Ray chose to attack there rather than giving Cresselia dry skin again. Or I guess he did, I'm sorry. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's...
okay, I was curious what Cresselia's last move is, because we saw Ice Beam in the previous game, but that would explain it. So he chooses to attack with Jinx because instead of taking or getting dry skin immediately, he wanted to get Swift Swim from Kingdra, which is definitely an interesting move there. I'm curious if he gets set up here, and it's going to be difficult for him to do it because he's still got another turn he's got to survive, where Kingdra will wake up and Palatoad may, but he's trying to get, I assume, Swift Sim Jinx going here, and then Dry Skin, Calm Mind, Cresselia. And if he sets that up, the game is probably over, but I'm not sure if... I think he's going to be one turn too slow.
It might be, but it's still an interesting thing. And then huuuryu is stuck in the position where he has to wonder what the biggest threat is going to be. Is it the Cresselia or is it the Swift Swim Jinx? Both of which are kind of checked by that Bisharp, but not both of them, because he's going to get to that situation very quickly where he either has to Sucker Punch or worry about them setting up or sleeping. It makes a lot of sense to me, actually, that Cresselia's last move was Skill Swap, given we also know he's running the Nummel. with Simple, which means that the Calm Mind Cresselia could also take that from Nummel and start Calm Minding up at double the speed. So that actually makes a lot of sense now, seeing that he didn't have Psychic on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a pretty good choice. I'm just a little surprised to see him pull it off so beautifully there. He gets the knockout in Kingdra there, using skill swap with Cresselia instead of with Jinx. So there's very little threat of anything going wrong here. But huuuryu cleverly Hydro Pumps the correct target there. He sees what's coming just as easily as we do, and I believe this is an easy knockout on Jinx.
It should definitely be. I'm definitely not there yet, but I'm assuming it was the Water Gem Hydro Pump like it was the last game.
It is, but I was going to say, the reason I was assuming is I was like, well, wait a second, we haven't seen Jinx's item yet, and it's Focus Sash. Since Braylon doesn't have it, I was assuming it was on Jinx, and there it is. So exactly what huuuryu didn't want to see there. So Jinx is able to survive and hang out at one hit point there, and it's been given Swift Swim from Cresselia there. It's a little bit less useful than it could be because, well, Bishop would have the problem with Sucker Punch and Jinx having to attack, which it's not going to want to do here. Kinkelder, fortunately for huuuryu, can just Mach Punch and finish it off. So, yeah, a little less desirable of a spot for Ray here. He still does have Dry Skin Cresselia out and a 4-3 advantage for now. But I don't think he has a great switch in for the Kinkelder Mach Punch there. So he's probably going to have to start Calm Minding up there and just, eventually sacrifice Jinx there in spite of all that effort he put to set up.
You make that sound like such a terrible thing that he's just going to have to start Calm Minding up, which is what won him the first game. So really, even the worst option for Ray is actually still a very successful win condition on his part. The only thing is, the Politoed does not take too much damage from Ice Beam, and we still have to worry. I'm going to have to presume the Bisharp is in the back, judging by what huuuryu saw the first time. So I don't think we're in too bad of a situation if you're right, even if you lose the Swift Swim Jinx. Jinx in this time took out Kingdra, and is basically forcing Kinkelder, as I see right now, to use the Mach Punch anyway, so.
Yeah, so I mean, he gets a free Calm Mind out of it, and yeah, like you said, I would assume that Bisharp is the last Pokemon, and it's really not a bad position for Ray to be in at all. We did learn that he's going to, I think, based on the damage, it did probably 5 Calm Minds if he wants to one-shot the Bisharp. I believe he does survive the Sucker Punch pretty easily from full health if he gets that situation again, though. So that's one thing that we weren't anticipating in the previous game.
That's definitely something there, too. Also of note that the previous turn where, yes, Jinx had to be sacrificed, it also did take off that Fighting Gem from Kinkelder, which, just gravy, huh? Well, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, losing that Fighting Gem is just gravy. It makes it a little bit easier for Politoed to survive another turn, and we see it firing off the Hydro Pump here onto Kinkelder. I'm assuming by the fact that we saw a Hydro Pump from Politoed last turn that it doesn't have an effective way of dealing meaningful damage to Cresselia, so losing Kinkelder here is a really important loss on huuuryu's side. We do see that hidden power again, though, and it does some chip damage to Politoed here. I guess it's more than chip damage there. It's almost a 2-hit KO, but a free Calm Mind for Cresselia. And Ray is slowly getting back to the position he won the previous game from here with a 3-2 advantage now, and presumably Bisharp about to come back on the field.
Yeah, I really wish I was a little faster here so I could actually commentate with you at the same time, but I guess it is what it is. So, yeah, I even as the Jinx went down, you really have to think that that Ray's got the commanding position here. He's already got the Calm Mind started. He basically lost his Jinx, which is basically there to mess everything up and help Cresselia set up. So really everything is going Ray's way.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty best case for him, especially because he still has quite a bit of health on Politoed here, like enough that he gets to at least fire one blind Hydro Pump here, for better or worse. And he can either force huuuryu to attack it or get a free Calm Mind out of it, because either he Hydro Pumps Bisharp and Bisharp attacks, in which case Politoed has to start doing damage to, or enemy Politoed has to start doing damage to Ray's Politoed. He gets another free Calm Mind, assuming he wants it, or he gets. I guess that's the situation we're probably going to get here.
Well, that's probably what we're going to get because really, if you're huuuryu, you do not want to waste your Dark Gem threatening the Ray's Politoed in this case, because that really, as we saw last game, Sucker Punch barely does over 50% without that Dark Gem, so that's a big problem if you're huuuryu. If you use that item to take down Ray's Politoed.
Yeah, we do see Surf from Politoed there, so that makes sense. So he's got a dry skin focused team, so using Surf to heal it up there. Not a tactic you see too often from experience, but it is similar to Haruto's strategy As strange as that is to say, with the Iron Ball Palatoad and the water-absorbed Jellicent he was using on his team. Little stranger of a situation here with Dry Skin Cresselia instead, but the same concept applies, and the quick Surf healing Cresselia up there before it attacks also puts an awkward situation here for huuuryu, because even if he gets the Sucker Punch off in Cresselia now, he knows that Palatoad is going to heal it some, and there will probably be a nice knockout for Ray here, but a good solution there, if he wasn't going to do enough damage in one hit, Helping Hand it.
Exactly. So there's a lot of interesting things like that could just happen here, and I imagine you're a little farther ahead than me still, but based on what we've seen in Ray's tricks, his team is actually extremely well thought out. Like, you might think this is a kind of a joke team, but it might be a little less serious, but it really covers itself very well. Like, all the little tricks do everything that they need to do.
Yeah, we do see the Helping Hand Sucker Punch from Palatoad and Bisharp there, knocking out Cresselia in a single hit. He gets a critical hit there, but I'm pretty sure he didn't need it. Surf brings Palatoad down to about 1/4 of its health, and Bisharp at a little bit higher than that. And we see Breloom coming out here as Ray's last Pokemon. Close game this time. Palatoad had almost no health here, and then Breloom's still at full, but I think Ray can close this game out pretty easily here, but the threat of Sucker Punch is always problematic. But still, I mean, when you're down to a 2 Pokemon versus 2 Pokemon here, and you've got the 2 faster Pokemon, it's usually pretty hard to mess that one up.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing. That's really not what I expected to happen. I mean, it should make sense that Helping Hand is obviously on the Palatoad, and especially when you're running a Kingdra in Black and White 2, when it could actually do that with Drizzle. This is just something that it'd be interesting to see. Like, presumably you go for Mach Punch. You got to be careful of Bisharp protecting. If he does have it, you got to be careful of Bisharp protecting itself, and potentially giving some free damage. Then onto Bisharp to set up for the Sucker Punch. There's a lot of things that can go here, but you got to be pretty comfortable in Ray's driver's seat right now.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'd assumed Helping Hand was the last move, right? Because we saw it choose to Hydro Pump that turn with Cresselia and Jinx out, so it was likely it wasn't carrying Ice Beam. And if you don't have Ice Beam, we do have Protect, Hydro Pump, and Hidden Power. Helping Hand is the obvious remaining move. So I'm sure Ray anticipated that, but it just kind of had to force him to make that play to get the damage out there. And I think he's still in a better position. So, it always sucks to give up your Cresselia that easily. It was the right play. See the Sucker Punch from Bisharp failing against Palatoad there, and an easy knockout for Breloom using the low sweep on Bisharp. One of those moves we don't see very often, but one of the few forms of speed control on Ray's team. And the clock is probably striking 12 for huuuryu here, with only Palatoad left to fight both Breloom and Ray's Palatoad. Both of Ray's Pokemon are down to almost no health here, so I guess it's technically possible for Palatoad to win if Ray misses a Hydro Pump or knocks out his own Pokemon with Surf or something, but looking really good for Ray here.
Yeah, it's it's almost if you're huuuryu, you debate protecting, just to see if he's going to Surf to get that guaranteed damage rather than trying to go for the missing Hydro Pump. So there's still a chance here. Just depends on how those dice rolls end up.
Yeah, and Ray cleverly does not knock out Breloom with Surf and chooses to use the 2 single target attacks again instead. I assume we'll see that again on the final turn of the game here. And we do, and Breloom's low sweep knocks out another victim, and we see Ray Rizzo winning the first game for Team USA 2-0 here. It's a disappointing Worlds for Ray this year, but the American hero showing why he's the best player in our country there, taking out a clean 2-0 win against the former Japanese national champion.
On the other hand, definitely not my national champion and national hero, but you got to respect Ray. I mean, even when it seems like he's coming up with these joke teams, you still have to be careful. Like, if you play him even on some of the simulators and he'll be using something that's absolutely ridiculous, his level of ridiculous is better than probably my level of normal team playing and team building. So it doesn't surprise me that Ray comes out on top and basically all these matches when he's giving it his efforts. I really like the Jinx in that matchup. I really like the way Ray's team actually synergizes with itself, and I really don't think huuuryu had a good answer to some of those key extra, odd pieces like the Jinx, as we were touching on earlier, or the Combine Cresselia, which mystically gets dry skin, or something to that effect. So, well played by Ray, and well played by huuuryu based on what he had, but I don't think the team advantage was in his favor in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know either, and I think that match is sort of an interesting example of what you can do with some of the. I don't hate using the word gimmick, but some of the more gimmicky teams like Rays. He was in a situation where his opponent knew the team, and it wasn't just that he caught him by surprise, but he played what he had really well, and it's a team that I wouldn't expect him to use at a serious tournament just because, it's got limited options, I guess. So it has some very binary matches where you win or you lose. But I thought this was a match where either side could have taken it, even though I agree with you that Ray probably had the better team matchup there. And he made good plays with it. And I think sometimes with the very best players, it feels different playing against them. You don't see too many just strange plays. He'll bust the game open with a few good predictions like that, and I think he's really dangerous to the team like this one, where like one or two good predictions means that half your team is asleep or that he's starting to set up on you. Like he can take momentum and run with it really quickly with his team. So I think that's a really interesting, I guess attribute that this team has that maybe some more conventional teams wouldn't. So he used what he had to its advantage there, and did some things with it that maybe you couldn't with a more conventional team.
And then one thing to note is, when you're using a team like this, it's hard for the other person, especially if they don't know it, to predict correctly against it. Like, if I saw Jinx on a team, I am not predicting that the Cresselia is going to switch in and it's going to skill swap dry skin to it. Like, that's not my first thought. I'm thinking maybe fake out Spore, like as we saw with the Breloom Jinx leads. We know that huuuryu probably saw a video of this, we're not entirely sure, but it's hard to predict against something you don't know. And that's just one of those things. Like, this automatically, when you're looking at this on Team Preview, and then you're against Ray, you're like, I do not know what I'm facing. And then you start to wonder exactly what it's going to do. And you make bad plays yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things, too, where, especially I imagine players like huuuryu, when you're running a more conventional team like that, you're probably used to facing a more, isolated metagame in Japan. You probably face a lot less of this sort of thing, right? And maybe if Ray had used a more standard, his usual Japanese-centric teams, it might have been a little easier game for huuuryu to play. He's used to playing a set sort of thing. He knows what strategies he needs to employ. He's probably played similar matches 100 times. A little trickier in this situation where you don't have the game plan there, and once things start going badly, you may not have a great plan B, I guess. Like, I think in both of those games, Ray was perfect in the first turn, and things really started snowballing hard against huuuryu. And it's like, you don't think about, what if I let Cresselia have dry skin and it calm minds? What do I do in this situation? Like, I can safely say no one has ever thought about this at any point in team building ever.
Well, exactly. That's the thing, right? It's just, and we touched on this originally when we were talking about the rundown and how huuuryu's team evolved. Is that team basically just it evolved from something that was very good in the Japanese metagame to something that was even better in the Japanese metagame. But I guarantee you the Japanese metagame does not have Calm Mind, Dry Skin, Cresselia. It does not have Jinx in it. I'm sure it doesn't have Numel in it. So these are the kind of things where huuuryu bringing that team that is so good in its region. Like, it's probably one of the top teams in its region if people are all, using what they should be using. And I use should in quotations because, playing outside the metagame is sometimes really good. But it's one of those teams that it's good at what it does, but dealing with this kind of thing, not so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the beauty of Ray's team, too, is like, I think a lot of people try to be strange just to be strange, and it doesn't pay off, but this is a really good, I guess, application of some creative ideas. There's both things that it's less reliable than a normal team, I guess, but like there were actual like tangible strengths here, and I don't know, it's one of my favorite teams. It's a little odd when you've got things like Numel and that sort of thing on it. Obviously it's not the most conventional of options, and maybe not the best option, but he played it as best as it could be played. It's always fun to watch in these teams. I guess to expand the gimmick team just slightly more, but like we see a lot of people try to use cool teams in these show matches, and most of the time they fall flat on their face because you can't just throw cool Pokemon together and expect them to work. And Ray's done a good job of showing why he's such a good team builder, because his gimmick team actually works.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, I've seen a lot of these teams that Ray has put together that work just like so well together. They work. I don't think anyone else, like, if you challenged anyone else out there to say you should make a good team with Numel, Like, do you think you're going to get anything like this? Probably not. And that's where Ray's strengths really lie. Like, Ray has never really been, I guess, until a team like this, he's never really been the flashy player. Like, if you look at the teams he used in 2010, 2011, and 2012, he just found the best pieces and put them together to make a really cohesive unit. That's how he won 2012, definitely. That's how he won 2010. 2011, he added some counter teams just to pick up on the trends going in the metagames. But Ray's strength has always been that he's built things that are very, very solid. So touching on that, he's taken some attributes that he likes, such as Pokemon with Simple, some abilities that are good against rain, such as Dry Skin, and he's looked up the Pokemon he needs to do, and then he's also made them a really like comprehensive unit. Now, if he was trying to be flashy, he probably wouldn't be using Cresselia. He'd probably be using, I don't know, Grumpig or something. But Ray knows his limits, and he knows the limits of what he can do, and that's why he ends up building teams like this that also are extremely strong. Grumpig #1.